everybody, peace and harmony with you here today. Zooming in on the topic of the covert narcissist and generally their personality disorder and what their methodology of manipulation, control, and really abuse looks like. The covert narcissist has been receiving a lot of attention, namely for the sort of front or facade of this type of narcissist, which really belays the more commonly known or understood overt narcissist, who's extremely showy, showstopper, outwardly flashy, and takes advantage of others in a very sort of haughty sense or very outwardly expressive sense, by the way their communication, their tone of voice, oftentimes their decisiveness, their ability to boldly take advantage of others, keeping multiple relationships going. So it's very easy to observe and acknowledge these types of narcissists. However, the covert narcissist has similar personality traits and tactics as defined by the DSM-5R, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual that is utilized by mental health professionals to diagnose and treat these individuals. And namely, they possess a number of different qualities and traits, but namely that of inflated self-importance, meaning they're putting themselves and their needs way above those of others, which includes a lot of grandiose thinking, fantasy behaviors, and coupled with a lack of empathy. So the ability, or lack of ability rather, to understand the feelings, needs, and wants of another. So the covert narcissist, though, rather than being having a lot of outward signs, they essentially abuse more by omission or by really a sort of quiet selfishness, where they take advantage of the altruistic nature of the people in their life. And they're able to essentially be served, if you will. The covert narcissist usually has a very docile, a very sort of underspoken, sort of cool, calm demeanor upon meeting them. Almost stoic in nature, where they're very sort of, guarded, maybe, a little bit clumsy, socially aloof, but yet usually highly intelligent and accomplished in specific areas of their life. And they really sort of possess an inner quietness, which is essentially them shutting off what they feel is their treasure. Major B. Sorry about that, guys. They are able to. They are essentially able to protect their sort of inner superiority by not sharing. So, in other words, their display of their haughtiness, their sense of arrogance, their sort of selfishness, their self-centeredness, their inflated self-importance is not usually outwardly stated. However, you can usually feel it in their demeanor. In other words, they will very calmly take ownership and sole credit for many things, and they will really, to the lack of involvement of others and lack of acknowledgement of others, and just general open communication, acknowledging others, sort of opening the air. They stifle the air through a sort of quiet superiority sort of stifling, and they tend to keep this sort of very aloof yet domineering way about them. And it's not domineering where they're overly trying to exert control, so that's why it goes so undetected. So they don't overly take control. They do it more by using the codependents in their life to have them basically serve them through exploitation of their altruistic side, their good nature, by not sort of attending to others and giving them sort of any place in the relationship dynamic or family dynamic. They'll kind of erase that. They'll kind of negate that. They will, it's a very sort of subtle abuse by omission which generally has a chronicled and accruing effect over time. So this sort of ignoring, the statement, ignore something and it will go away, is kind of like the control tactics of the covert narcissist. Because essentially they're trying to ignore, minimize, and subjugate, meaning keep lesser than, second to, third to, etc., than themselves. So rather than outwardly saying, it's my feeling that we should do this and this, and taking like an expressive sort of authority within the relationship, they do it more by withholding, by ignoring, by a sort of quiet demeaning, where it really leaves the other person wondering, guessing, sensing that something is wrong, something's not off. Something about me must not be good enough. I'm not worth the time of day. I'm not, worth acknowledging. Hey, how are you doing? How's your day? No kidding. Tell me about it. They don't quite have that same approach. So where it can be very, very important and essential, especially when we're talking about a parent-child relationship, that sort of attuning, that sort of acknowledgement, that sort of mirroring, that sort of basic, fundamental, reflecting and opening up the relationship so that they're able to process feelings, process boundaries, not feel like there's something wrong with them. So it's really noticed and really picked up, I would say, perhaps more readily by the child. A covert narcissist abuse is generally more picked up by a child, I would say, than a spouse, because the spouse has really become very altruistic and very sort of codependent in that relationship, and does it really out of the feeling like that, well, that's my role, without realizing that they're oftentimes giving more to that covert than to keep things balanced. So it's really an abuse by ignoring, an abuse by turning a blind eye. It's an abuse by sort of silent suffering that the covert narcissist will abuse. And so it is very important to realize and kind of filter that out and kind of siphon out this type of abuse, because it goes so undetected and it's so harmful and it's so painful and very difficult to process and make sense logically of why was I taken advantage of, especially in my good nature, especially in my vulnerable nature, especially in my my basic needs. Why did I become such a lost child, or unacknowledged? So you can't always explain that rationally, logically. You have to let them go, and let them go emotionally, so that they're no longer inflicting that same sort of abuse by withholding, ignoring, and omission. Peace and harmony with you here today. I do hope these videos help. Please share, please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.